Welcome back to another episode of the Brett Snodgrass podcast. I'm excited for our guests today, Gary and Susan Harper. And before we get into them, if this is the first time listening to the Brett Snodgrass podcast, make sure you subscribe. Go to YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you get all the videos that come out each week. And if you're listening to the audio version, subscribe to that as well and leave comments and reviews. So, like I said, I'm with Gary and Susan Harper. And you guys are in Phoenix, Arizona right now, but I know you live in Northwest Indiana. But how are you guys doing today?
Very good, actually. We're enjoying the beautiful weather. Although I woke up this morning and heard it's supposed to be like 70 degrees in Indiana. I was like,
it is.
The one time we get to leave home, right, and go to Phoenix, and it's beautiful there.
There will still be more sun here than at home, though.
That's true.
That is, yes. No, it's crazy because it's in the mornings, it's like 41, and I was waiting at the bus stop today, and everybody's wearing shorts. So in Indiana, 41, it's like, wow, this is awesome. So sounds good. Well, I'm really excited just to kind of interview you guys. I know we've been friends and business associates for many years now. You guys have helped our team out tremendously, the Simple Wholesaling team. You're our consultant, coach, mentor with life and in business. And I kind of want to just go over what you guys have done because you guys have quite the resume when it comes to business and personal life. A lot of experiences. So Gary and Susan, you're the founders and owners of Sharper Business Solutions, which is basically a firm that helps organizations clarify, simplify, and achieve their vision. You've been able to help out 50 plus. I know maybe that's even old. It might be 100 now, especially in the REI space. You guys help out many organizations that I'm familiar with scale and achieve our visions. Gary, you started investing in real estate in 2004, and I know you've been a part of thousands of real estate transactions yourself. 2013, Gary actually contracted a life-threatening disease, Lyme disease, which basically changed your course in life forever. So we're going to dive into that a little bit. And when I think of you guys, I think of a powerhouse business couple, but also just an amazing marriage too. I know you guys do a lot of marriage retreats, couples retreats, and you talk about your personal life as well. And in business, I know you've helped people from all over the country. And I think of Gary, you're just an amazing visionary. You're the people person, you're the face, the presenter, and then Susan, you're like behind the scenes, behind the curtain, doing the processes and making the engine run pretty much all the time. So that's pretty much your highlight reel, guys, and I'm excited to dive into your story. And so, Gary, why don't we just kind of start off with you? I know you kind of were in the corporate world for a long time, and talk to us about that, real estate and investing, and just kind of bring us up to your life story.
Cool. Yeah, Brett, great. Thanks for allowing us to be on this. And you're somebody that Susan and I both look up to. And I hear a lot of great things about where you are in life as well. And I just want to recognize that as well for the listeners here today. And Brett is an amazing soul, loves God, loves his family, and he loves helping other people. And if I was ever asked, like, what are the top three things you admire about Brett? Those are it, right? God first, he loves his family, and he loves helping others, right? And so that's why I feel so bonded with you, and I really have enjoyed our opportunity to be together, work together, and live this life together in general. And so thanks for allowing us to be on here today. And I know Susan feels the same way about you, Brett. And so thank you for allowing us to be a part of this podcast today. So for those listeners out there, if you want to know, is that Brett Snodgrass the real deal? He really is. He really is.
You're making me blush, Gary.
No, you really are, man. And we got, we've now worked, I think that is probably a little older. We've worked with over 500 companies now. And, so we get a lot of chances to see people in their element and their worst days even. Yeah. And Brett's been the same consistent personality and the same consistent love for God, same consistent love for family, and same consistent drive to help others as the first day I met him. So I love that about you. Thanks for that consistency. In regards to my life, Sharper Business Solutions was founded in 2016-17 era. It's actually named after Susan. So it's S. Harper, Susan Harper. And that's how it came about. And Susan's the love of my life. And we met in 1997, got married that year. Met in 1996, got married in 1997. I immediately had a different purpose in life. I went from being a janitor, high school dropout, to wanting to better myself and not just for myself, but for my wife. She deserved more than what I was at that moment. And so I worked feverishly hard to probably harder than most people had to, because I didn't have the formal education and background, and worked, had to put the extra work in to get to where I was going to go versus somebody that, had went to college and so forth. And so I worked in corporate America from the age of 20 years old on, and started off at $7.15 an hour and worked my way up to a corporate exec over the years. And it wasn't an easy journey. It was hard work, and I was taught at a very young age to work 8 hours a day to survive, the rest to get ahead. And so I put a lot of time and effort in past that 8 hours. I just didn't show up and do my job. I worked on making things better for not just me, but for the customer and the company I was working for. And so that led me through a career of corporate America, managing people. Eventually managed over 750 employees with over 50 mid-level managers throughout my career. And I saw a lot of people grow and succeed in corporate America. And that at the same time, I found myself wanting more. I found myself wanting more for my family, and not just grinding every day to get to this, this perceived freedom of financial, insecurity, right, that we get in corporate America. And so my brother-in-law, Wayne Schaefer, Brett, you know him, and really kind of got to know, you and I got to know each other through him in many ways. Wayne had started working on me at probably 12 years old to learn investing in general. He gave me a stack of baseball cards and taught me the value of baseball cards. And he said, if you save these and you take care of them, you'll be able to get some type of return. And it was a hobby, but also something that was teaching me life lessons. And Wayne did that like 12, 13 years old. So that transitioned into later in life of teaching me real estate. I said earlier about being a high school dropout. I moved away from Virginia, moved up to Northwest Indiana to live in an apartment that Wayne owned, and to pay for it, I had to work for him. I had to help him remodel houses and clean out houses and do all the grunt work that, a 16 to 18-year-old should be doing. Right. And I learned a lot about the value of hard work, and I learned a lot about the value of investing. And so through that, started investing myself. By 2004, I had a bunch of rentals, and I had a bunch of opportunity to start having passive income. Learned some lessons from that as well. Actually lost it all by 2010. And we ended up actually filing bankruptcy in 2009 to 2010 because we invested wrong, and maybe not wrong, but didn't really educate ourselves 100% on where we should be and what the market could do. Being young investors through that time, we learned a lot of lessons about how the market can make something go from cash flow to negative and be a weight on you really hard. Yeah. And the market reassessed and taxes reassessed, and just the perfect storm came together, and that led us to thinking that we're going to have to spend the rest of my life in the corporate world, and I was resolved to that, to be honest with you. But God wasn't resolved to that. He knew that wasn't the path that I was meant to spend in my life. And in 2011, I contracted Lyme disease and put a finger on my life, and he stopped me dead in my tracks. I always tell, if you really want to know God's plans for your life that sometimes aren't our plans, sometimes he makes a decision for us that we would never have made for ourselves. Yeah. And we look at that and go, man, like this is such torture. This is a hard thing to do. And that could be one of those things that definitely.
Yeah, because it led us to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I want to stop you there, Gary, because I want to just kind of dive into that, because I haven't heard maybe your whole story, and it's just amazing. You had a lot of challenges, right? I mean, you went corporate world, you worked yourself up, and then you filed bankruptcy 2010, 2011. You get Lyme disease. It's like you're getting your Mike Tyson just knocking you out. So Susan, how were you feeling, watching Gary and your family go through this, right? Number one, the bankruptcy, you're on top of the world, then you're on the pit, right? And then going through this disease. Let's talk about you, during 2010 and 11, during that time.
Sure. So just even kind of pulling the trigger in the act of filing bankruptcy, almost, it was humiliating enough, but realizing that this was just, I mean, we're having to do it on our business. This was a side hustle that we really, Gary at that time was still working in corporate America. I was still teaching school. We had our jobs, we had our income. It wasn't shutting us down. It didn't knock us off our feet. It just kind of took away what we thought was going to be a retirement or what was going to be, our freedom play at that point. So, it was just, I think we've just learned to roll with the punches. So that was the first one. And it was like, okay, it's just one of those things. We've got to get it done. It's, and it's not even, I think we even took a year and a half to actually pull the trigger and actually file, because at that point we had everything had reassessed. We were upside down in every single mortgage we had on every property. And we took out of our savings to pay it up until the point where our savings was gone. So at this time, it's like, okay, we can't keep doing that. There's nothing left.
Right.
I still have to pay my mortgage and feed our kids and, and still take care of what we have to take care of.
Yeah.
And, because we did everything we could to save face with the bank, because we at that point were with a local bank. And, we even went in every month and said, look, here's our rent. Here's every dime we collected. It's all yours. And it still doesn't match our payments. So tell us what to do. And they're the ones who actually encouraged us to file bankruptcy.
Wow.
You really need to do this. This is what has to happen, because that way it'll stop reporting negative to your credit. It'll stop doing lots of things for you. So it was just kind of rolling with the punches at that point.
Yeah, Susan has an unbelievable canny ability to have the right perspective on everything.
Yeah.
And so she's never been a negative person in any way. It's probably one of the biggest things that keeps me driving hard is that I don't have this nagging thing in my ear telling me how horrible the decision I was, how stupid I was to do this, how bad it was that I put our family in this jeopardized position. It was always like, you know what, we can get through this. That's all right. There'll be tomorrow. We'll do it again. Right. Like, and never discourage me from not doing it again. Like, just like, okay, well, what did we learn and how do we do it better next time? That's been a phenomenal tool, right? If you call it that, in my life, because Susan is such a high drive, but right perspective type person.
I like that. I like that really right perspective. I think that's so good. And obviously, was your faith shaken during this time? Because I know you guys are people of faith, and you guys seem like you have an unshakable faith. But during this time, were you questioning that?
I don't think, not for me. I mean,
for me, it almost drove me the opposite. I would have said before my faith, I don't know that my faith was as strong as it is now, because it hadn't been tested yet. It's like, everything was fine at that point. Until you're tested, do you really know how strong you are? So when Gary got sick, I would have said, so there's my favorite verse in the Bible is hope is the anchor of the soul. So hope is perspective. Hope is a huge thing for me. And I would have, at the time before Gary got sick, I would have said Gary was my anchor. He was the one I was hoping in and expecting to provide and take care of us, and had done a phenomenal job up until he got sick. He got sick, and it's like, okay, well, he's not there for you right now. So now what are you going to do? Yeah. It's like, okay, well, honestly, and so that's where my tattoo comes in. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, what is that?
It's an anchor and an infinity sign, because now my hope resides in the Lord, because he is never going to leave me, never going to stop. And my hope is now in him. So the strength I have now is because of what we went through. So I wouldn't say it shook us. I think it made us stronger.
Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting thing. I was at a weird place in my life at that point.
We were on top of the world.
Yeah, I was on top of the world. And I think sometimes when you're on top of things, you don't always really back to like needing God, because you're everything's going so well. And actually that year, I made a New Year's resolution, and my New Year's resolution was to increase my faith and to get in shape. I was about 260 pounds, and I wanted to get in shape and I wanted to increase my faith. And that year I dropped 165 pounds, best shape of my life, P90X every single day. Susan was doing it with me. We were feeling great. And literally I hit my goal on like May 20th, which was my birthday. So I started it in January, lost literally over 80 pounds, almost 80 pounds or over 80 pounds. And I hit my goal. And literally that day, so we did this party for my birthday that year. I was turning 35 years old that year. And I turned 35 and it was a great time. We're having this great party. And literally a week to the day, like I started not feeling well. And I got bit literally looking back at it, like almost a week to that day. And it was crazy because I hit my goal of weight loss and immediately God said, all right, time to increase your faith.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So I want to talk about, so you contracted Lyme disease, and this was a life-threatening disease, right? Like, did doctors ever say, Gary, I don't know if you're going to live? Yeah. So this is literally a life-threatening disease. So you're going through this. You're on top of the world. Now, you know, it's crazy because now you're like, you have no idea, right? I'm sure all these things are going through your mind, making money, living, your legacy, your kids, your family. So Susan, let's just start with you. I mean, what was this like, right? Were you having to work harder, a couple of jobs, just trying to take care of Gary? What was going through your mind?
Well, when it first started, you know, we kept going to doctor after. So Lyme's disease presents itself in lots of different symptoms. We didn't immediately know it was Lyme's disease. It took us a good 4 months to actually get that diagnosis. And up until then, we had seen doctor after doctor after doctor. And it was the most heart-wrenching thing to see the doctor say, there's nothing wrong with you.
Wow.
So it was, you know, and being handed anti-anxiety medicine. And knowing my husband, knowing there is something wrong, and it was just our desire to continue to fight to find something that we could pin it to. We just couldn't give up. There was no point in giving up. I said, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do. We're not going to give up. We're going to just keep fighting.
So if you think that you wouldn't have kept fighting and you would have said, the doctor said, I don't know, nothing's wrong with you and take this medicine, what do you think would have happened?
So we actually, our doctor, at the point we actually even identified what it was, he said, you probably have 6 months left.
Wow.
He goes, it is attacked every major organ. It's gotten into your brain. It's really done a lot of damage. And at that point, you have a very limited amount of time. Wow. So it was before the diagnosis, you had taken a Family Medical Leave Act from work. I taught school and taught home economics, and it's not funny.
I love home ec, by the way. I took home ec, yeah. That's how I learned how to cook. So anyways, go on.
So he came to work with me every single day. And it was watching him. So I taught at a private school. Our children went to that private school. And so it was like we got to go to school every day with the kids, every day at lunch. So I was home economics and I was a food service director. So every day at lunch, I was in the cafeteria. Gary was in the cafeteria. The kids could come see us. So it was watching him go from being in executive status to helping me wash dishes that it's like, you know, first off, he's like, I can't believe you would even want or ask me to do that. And I'm like, well, you're not too good to wash dishes. You're fine. But it was the desire to make him keep going. It's like, no matter what, I mean, we're just going to wake up the next morning. We're going to get up. We're going to get dressed. We're going to go to school. We're going to go to work. And you're right. I mean, I did. I took on 3 different jobs. Every weekend I would work for a property management company and clean out houses or paint houses, or construction work is one of my favorite things to do. And being a school teacher, I would do it every summer with the kids. So we would do it on the weekends. I answered phones late at night. I had and like your first at-home job, which was out of the blue back then. But so yeah, we just, wow. I don't even know how we made it, but our lights stayed on. We had food in the kitchen. We had our bills paid, and yeah.
You got to do what you got to do.
And found the right doctor. So yeah. that was our keys to keep going.
Yeah, I mean,
Gary, talk to us about. So you got this diagnosis, 6 months to live. You can't hardly take care of yourself.
Yeah, I went back to probably like a 5-year-old mental state, if you want to consider it that way. I mean, just not technically. I mean, I could get up, I could take care of myself to a degree, but I would have 10 to 20 panic attacks a day. It had gotten in my nervous system. I would wake Susan up 3 to 8 times a night with different panic attacks and impending doom and feeling like my heart was racing. The Lyme had gotten in my heart, so it caused my heart to have different arrhythmias, and it would speed up or get my pulse rate would drop really low. I get really lightheaded, really dizzy, it would send me into panic attack after panic attack, thinking I was going to die. And then now hearing that I might not make it, didn't know when that day was coming. And it just, the way Lyme works is it just starts slowly shutting things down, the infections do. And so at this point now, I'm starting to see it in my blood work. My liver's not functioning properly. My heart, I was on heart monitors. My heart was all over the place. I had, a nervous system problem at that point because it was in my nervous system. Horrible headaches, pain in my head. Like I can't even explain to you what it was like. I remember waking up one night and asking her just to take a hammer and hit me over the head. Wow. And then she's like, what? And I'm like, I just need somebody to relieve the pressure. I said, please, I promise you I won't be mad at you. Just split my head open. I mean, looking back, it was the most crazy thing you could ever say to somebody. But like, I needed the pain to go away. It was that for 9 months, it was just a constant pain. And I just wanted it gone. Like at that point, I remember saying to her, I don't want to live like this anymore. I just want it over. And I had gone 9 days without any sleep. It had messed with my nervous system so bad that I didn't sleep for 9 straight days. And so she scheduled a call with my sister and a pastor at our church. And we went in and had a really good conversation with him. And I remember saying, I just don't want to lose my mind. Yeah. Because I've always made money with my mind. And he says, well, it's not yours. It's not yours to keep. It's God's. And we went through.
It was a pretty tough time at that point.
And, he said, God's a very sovereign God. And he'll give it back to you if he wants. And I don't talk about this a lot anymore.
No.
It was a hard time.
Yeah, it's really easy to go back into that mental state of where we were.
Yeah. Right questions.
Yeah.
But we made it through. God was very gracious to us. I remember being in a parking lot and just wanting to buy her a cup of coffee. And we didn't have any money left. We had spent it all on our whole life savings on doctors. And I felt so selfish. How dare I? Why didn't I just let it happen? Why didn't I just pass away? And why would I waste all this money? Now everything I've worked for, I've left her with nothing. And I feeling overwhelmed with that, just that guilty feeling of feeling so selfish in that moment. And we're going to Dunkin, and she would get horrible headaches, and still does. And caffeine seems to help. And so I was just wanted to buy her a 50-cent cup of coffee, and we didn't have it. And we were looking through purses and change and car seats and just everything to try to find 50 cents. And I think we had like 45 cents and something. And I'm like, pull up, just, go ahead and get in line. And so a lot of people there. And I said, give me a couple more minutes. I'm going to look in the back. And she let somebody else go in front of us. I'm just pull up, babe. Maybe have one of those little jars that have like some change in it. Maybe we can take it out of there. And we pull up, and it's like 53 cents, or we're like thinking it's going to be 53 cents or something. And the guy hands us coffee and says, all right, have a good day. And we're like, whoa, how much is it? And he's like, no, the person in front of you just paid for you. And then, just things like that would happen with the church. And we had $50 left in our bank. And I turned to Susan, and we had just gotten, we cleaned out a house and got $500, had $50 left. And it was our tithe money. And it was 10%. And I turned to her and I said, we have to tithe. And she's like, it's all I have.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't know how to buy groceries this week if we put that in there. And I said, well, I'm not going to get mad at me anymore, so you're going to have to put the money in the plate. So she did. She put it in, and we got in the car and just cried the whole way home because we had no money left. And we walk up the house, and there's a check there. We had overpaid a doctor by $55. And God had given us back the $50 plus $5 for tithe.
Wow. And
I'll never forget that. Those moments. I mean, there were time after time. I shared just a couple stories with you, but how God just made sure all our needs were always supplied for. We never fell behind in our personal home. We never lost anything. The kids didn't. The kids were in a private school. We worked extra. They cleaned the cafeteria so they could go to school for free. Like we did everything we could do. We busted our butts to make sure we made it through. And it was so humbling because I went from being a corporate exec, making hundreds of $1,000s a year. We literally just won executive of the year that year I got sick. 7 out of 10 years I'd won that. highest add-on revenue, highest client retention rewards, all kinds of stuff. And God just used it to really humble me in a really big way. And I remember sitting there when the doctor said you have maybe 6 months left to live. And I just think to myself, is this really all it is? This is it, right? And I remember promising God that if he gave me my life back, I'd give it back to helping other people. And we came out of it. You know, I found a doctor. We came out of it. We started getting better. It took me a full year from the time that we started finding the right treatments, and that was a journey in its own right. But we finally found the right treatments and got to a place of healing. And I remember waking up that morning, like it was yesterday. I sat on the side of the bed, and the headache was finally gone.
Wow.
And I turned to her and I'm like,
give me the keys.
give me the keys. And she's like, what?
Where are you going?
Like, I haven't driven in over a year. I want to drive. And she's like, no. And I'm like, and I'm like, so I jump in the car and I take off. I don't even know where I'm going. I'm just driving. And you gotta understand, I haven't left her side in 12 months at this point. And the fear, the anxiety, all that comes along with illness. I just wanted to be free again. I was 15, 16 years old when I left home for the first time on my own. And I'm driving around and I come back home and walk in the house and she's just sitting there crying. I'm like, what are you crying about? She was like, I didn't know where you went. You know, I mean, I didn't realize, you know, all this had put so much fear in her heart of like, did he go just end it all? Like, yeah. You know, where did he go? Why did he take off? And I remember coming back in and just telling her that I just felt better. You know, I couldn't put on why I felt better or what was happening. The treatments were working, the doxycycline, the minocycline, all these different antibiotics I had me on was finally working. And we started to explore the opportunity going back to corporate America, and they had kept my job for me for over a year. And I remember calling my boss and telling him that I was ready to come back. And he met me at around the clock and we had a great session. And I called him and I'm like, hey, I just wanted you to know he had been a pivotal help with me and getting better. I said, I'm going to go back to work probably next week. And he says, why? So what do you mean, why? I need to start making money again. That $200,000 a year looks really good right now.
Yeah.
And he's like, Gary, you think God took you out of that, just put you right back in it? And I looked at him, I said, man, don't do that. Don't.
I need that money.
And he was like, I got an idea. And he had just started that wholesale business in 2011, and he had done about 48 deals that year. And he says, with all your experience, can you come help me build this? Can you come be a part of this? And it was the hardest decision I've ever made in my life. Like, seriously, out of all the ones we had made up to that point, that was literally one of the hardest, because I could have a check for over $2,000 in 2 weeks if I went back versus going to corporate or going to Helping Wayne and maybe making $20,000 a year. I didn't know. I know what I'd make.
Yeah.
And we took that jump and that leap of faith, and God had really, truly, that was that moment of feeling that God had fully installed in me that increased faith at that moment. And that's where we ended up. And it was a journey from there to here. Now I worked with Wayne for over 5 years and did almost 300 deals a year on Northwest Indiana. And then led us to the opportunity to help others, which I had in my heart. You know, Brett, I told God that if he gave me my life back, I'd give back to helping others. And I had that peace in knowing that I should do that, but I also knew that I had no right to help others until I became healthy myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not just physically healthy, but financially healthy again. And we worked really hard, and every dime we made, we saved. And we created a freedom plan of, I just needed to get to $5,312 a month. That was my number. $5,312 a month, monthly cash flow. Created the freedom we needed in our life. $60,000 a year is all we needed to be free. We didn't live extraordinarily outside of our means. Even through corporate America, we never upgraded and bought fancy stuff. We just lived with what God gave us, and then we gave the rest, right? And then we worked to save. Mm-hmm. And so through that journey, like I just needed to get back to $60,000. And it's funny, Brett, we've now saw the success and financial freedom, and we've seen that cash flow grow tremendously amount. And it's nowhere near $5,000 a month. And I'm almost embarrassed to think about like where we were and where we are today in regards to that and that small mindset. But I'll tell you, we still haven't changed our style of life. We still live in the same house. we still have, we have nice cars, but we don't have anything like, I don't have north of $100,000 car or anything like that. I just don't have a need for it, I've seen us be humbled really quick and go from what we felt was very wealthy to having nothing left. And it's not a fear thing, it's a respect thing. I respect the fact that God's given me this, and I want to live within my means, and I want to do as much as I can to give back to his work. And that's where we are now.
Amen. Well, thank you for being vulnerable, being raw, and sharing your story. I just think it's just an amazing story, and all the listeners, I'm sure, are very appreciative just of hearing everything you guys have gone through, and just writing down some notes here. Sometimes when your simple, basic needs are taken away, just the simple things of life, right? It's like driving a car, things that we all take for granted. You are elated that you got to go out and you got to actually drive a car when it's taken away from you. At the beginning of the show, we talked about Susan having a great perspective. Well, if we all could hear, hey, you only got 6 months left, I think that we all would have a little bit more perspective about what's really important in life. And I think that, just seeing you guys grow in your business, you guys have always had a great perspective. I always respect that you still have the same lifestyle. You're not out there buying, I'm not saying it's bad, but just, most of the YouTube channels that I watch about entrepreneurship in general typically are about that, right? They're about the mansion or the Lambo sitting in the background or whatever. And I do a Freedom Friday thing, and I actually just did one that freedom doesn't have to cost you millions.
No.
And I love that. It costed you $5,300 to be free, to get your needs met, and that's awesome. So now you guys have gone through this journey, and in the past 4 or 5 years, you've started your business today, the Sharper Business Solutions, and you guys have a lot of departments and channels, right? The one that I know is that you really, really help businesses, small businesses like myself, a lot of real estate investors, but I know you also help other businesses. You help us organize, create a vision, simplify, get freedom. I mean, that's the one thing that you really have helped me, and I have that, right? And, we talk about freedom, and my freedom doesn't have to cost me millions, but, just those simple questions. Literally 1 year ago, I was sitting in a meeting with Gary, and Gary asked me, Brett, do you even want to be the visionary of your company? And I remember thinking, is that even a choice? Do I have an option? Do I have to? I didn't even know I could make that decision. And he said, yeah, it's your company. And I said, yes, that's what I want. And that was a year ago. And here we are today that I stepped into the owner's box. So because of you, I didn't know I had that, option. So I thank you for that. And you guys have helped countless hundreds of businesses like that. And so Gary, tell us about your business. They call you the difference maker. And, you said that that's what you wanted to do. You promised God that you wanted to make a difference in people's lives. So talk to us about what you guys are doing today, and a little bit about Sharper.
So Sharper is an ecosystem of 10 businesses today. And it's kind of a one-stop shop. I used to work for a company called Icon. It stood for I Know One Name. And I wanted to create an ecosystem for small business owners, entrepreneurs that could know one name to help take care of their business needs or their non-core function needs, if you know what I mean by that. And so obviously we don't come in and teach you how to do your niche per se, right? We have a lot of experience in real estate, but really, I mean, we're looking to work with people that already know their niche. They've been successful to some degree in their business, but they maybe not have been successful in business and running a business. And so Sharper Consulting is one of the majority of what I spend most of my time living within. And that's where we go in one-on-one and consult business owners and how to create a scalable business that's scalable to whatever stage of business they want to scale it to. There's 5 stages of every business. There's startup, there's perseverance, there's the profit stage where we see 90% of the entrepreneurs get to and stay. Very, very comfortable stage. They're making money. They're working 40 or less hours a week. They're very happy with that. They're usually sitting in the visionary seat. Then there's the expansion stage where their purpose comes into play. It's not about profit, it's about purpose. And so they try to grow, they want to get bigger, they want to get better. And sometimes they're willing to sacrifice profit to reinvest it back into their business for growth. And if they do that, if they go to expansion stage without purpose, they'll always go back to stage 3 because it's more about the money than it is purpose. And it takes money to reinvest in the research and development to scale. And so not everybody's willing to go on that journey for 12 to 24 months of little to no profits to scale. And so obviously on the other side of that is higher returns, and it makes more sense. But we never advise people to go through that if there's not a purpose, right? If there's not a purpose-driven reason for going through that. But then the last stage is that succession stage, which is where you are now, Brett, moving into that owner's box or selling the company. Or some people hit succession when their head hits a pillow for the final time in their life, right? Like that's it. They want to work till the end. And so whatever that looks like for you. And so helping you navigate all 5 of those stages and getting the right people in the right seats. We help people hire. We have a company, Sharper Personnel, that's hiring over 140 real estate investor employees and other type business owner employees right now around the country for entrepreneurs. We have Sharper Speakers, which is a platform where we accredit, basically vet and do full credit check and vet them to make sure that they say or do what they say they do. I've grown weary in people getting up saying they're an expert in something and then finding out they're really not, right? And they just, yeah. And so this is, I have a partner, his name is Eddie Wilson. He has an American Association of Private Lenders that accredits private lenders. And I thought, what a great idea. Why not have that for speakers? Like, let's actually create an accredited place that people can say that they have been vetted. And if you want to listen to them, they actually do what they say they do, right? Verified. And so that's another one. The other one we have is Sharper Education. It's an online platform for entrepreneurs to learn how to increase their abilities, right? And so from being a CEO or just an employee within your company, how to lead those people. We have a couple other platforms. One that really strikes a chord in my heart is our Sharper Ministries. And it's our consulting arm, but with a twist because it's geared 100% towards ministries like churches and helping them build the business side of it. Jesus said, let me go about my Father's business. He recognized the church as a business. And so we have a non-for-profit ministries company that helps churches build that side of it. And we've actually had the honor of just doing one recently this year. And it's been a blessing. It's been a blessing being able to do that and give back to God's work. And it also helps missionaries and teaches them how do we do what we do so that they can help churches on the, or not churches, but businesses on the missions field, support them on the missions field. Yeah. And so that's ministries and work for that. And we also have that curriculum going to one of our colleges, our Christian college, to teach pastors on how to build a church business. And so we've donated that curriculum there as well. And so we got a lot of different businesses, a lot of different things in the ecosystem. I know I'm missing a couple off the top of my head right now. I go through them and it's just so many businesses, but I don't live in every business. So that's, if you say, well, how does he have all these businesses? I don't know them. Well, honestly, at the end of the day, I hire a visionary and I hire an integrator. And I create the vision, and then I immediately replace myself, and I live in the owner's box like you do, Brett. I live in the owner's box of 9 of the 10. I only choose to still work in the consulting, and I literally choose to do it when I want to. We took 3 months off last year just because we wanted to, and it just didn't work. We just stayed home. And we had the freedom to do that. And we have 7 other implementers that help us and implement with us. And so we just push the people to them during that time. But I literally choose to live in the owner's box of all those other companies. And I don't even choose to be the visionary of those companies. It's just, it's a freedom play for me. And that's what Sharper does. But ultimately, the purpose, why is Sharper? And our purpose is to do good work by others to support God's work. That's the purpose of Sharper, to do a good work. And the Bible says in Joshua chapter 1:8, have good success. It doesn't say have great success. God measures the quality and not the quantity of success we have. And so I want to do a good work. Everybody says, why wouldn't you want to do great work? Well, because that's not how God measures it. He measures it in a good way. And so I want to do a good work to support God's work. And our goal by 2026, that year, is I want to give $2.6 million to the Lord's work in that year.
Wow.
And that's my drive. That's why I get up every morning. Everybody says, why do you push so hard? Because it's not about me. It's about the purpose.
Yeah.
If I wanted to be selfish, I'd sit home and collect that minimum of $5,312 a month and just sit back and enjoy life. But some of it. And it goes farther than that. It's not just about God's purpose is the driving force, but the purpose to give my life to help other people, and that starts with my kids. My kids work for us. They're in Phoenix, Arizona right now, Brett. My son's in an adjacent room. My daughter and her husband's in the room about 15 rooms down, and seeing their lives changed and seeing them. And I don't give them anything. They work hard for everything they do, but the opportunity is there for them to work hard. And that's what I love. That's what Susan and I push so hard for.
I love that. And again, we're very familiar with your guys' company, helped us out so much. And I just still remember, coming back from a mastermind group, and you guys, it's funny because I was thinking about hiring you guys and Gary, and we sat up next on the plane, and we were going through our DISC test and personality scores and all these different things. And here we are. I think we've worked with you guys directly for a couple of years now. So Susan, you kind of sit more behind the scenes. You work on processes. They call you the queen of process mapping, and what that means is you're working on systems, processes, and it's something that visionaries never maybe enjoy. And I was doing a podcast the other day. We were talking about systems and processes, and it was also about freedom. And I was talking to Brian Snyder, who's the CEO of Simple Wholesaling, and we were talking about how processes they're not sexy, right? No visionary likes to talk about processes or do processes. And then I caught myself saying, if you don't have process, you will never be free. And I think that's the key, right? So you're the queen of process mapping. And so talk about kind of what you do and why is it important for businesses to map out their systems and their processes?
Sure. So it's funny because we all have a process in our business, whether we want to admit it or not. We do something, either maybe we change it a little bit every time we do it, but we have repeatable things we do every single day in our business. And if you're ever wanting to scale or to get yourself out of the seat you're sitting in, you've got to be able to document how you do it, because that's how you want the person behind you to come do it behind you. And if to give your team and give your employees clarity on the next step, on who's accountable for the next step, on what step is next to be taken. If we don't outline those things, we kind of put our employees in this maze and say, figure it out. So then they don't repeat it and they don't do it the same way every time. They'll miss a step or skip something that was very important. And so then it makes us go backwards in the process to have to redo. It saves time. If I can get visionaries to realize that this is the hour worth of work it takes to document a process will save you hundreds of hours of all these questions of what do I do now? It's immediately, here's your job, here's these steps you're going to take. Any questions? At that point, it's follow the process to the T. If there's an exception to the process, that's what we need a manager for. The manager steps in and says, okay, this is, an abnormal situation. Let's veer outside of the process on this step, but let's jump right back into the next and keep going. Yeah. So it just helps us all to be able to delegate what we want off of our plates.
Yeah. I always tell people, Brett, that the process manages 75% of what our employees do, right? So if you don't have a process, right, then you are not giving your people a roadmap to success. You're not giving your business a roadmap to success. So if 75% of what we do can be managed by a process, and it doesn't need a person to manage it, it needs a process to manage it, then we need leaders, managers for that exception, that 25% that falls outside of the process. We never document the exceptions in a process. We just document the rule, like what the rule is, because the exceptions are then managed by people, right? Mm-hmm. And here's the problem, Brett, that when we don't have a process, then everything's an exception.
Yep.
I like that. I'm going to put that behind me on a sign. That's awesome. So when you guys walk into like a business organization, I'm always just curious, like, what do you see? Like, you've worked with 500 businesses. What's like some of the common things that you walk in, you're like, oh my gosh, this is nuts. Why are you doing this? And like, what's some of the common mistakes?
Well, I mean, we just love processes. I'll tell you, number one common mistake is nobody has processes, right?
Or nor do they put a priority around it.
Right. And so they put their employees in a maze. And we know that there are typically 8 different, what we call 8 deadly sins of waste, where it causes a business to fail, right? Or has a problem. And then of those 8 deadly sins, 7 of them are process related. Only 1 is behavioral related or people related.
So people will get rid of the employee that's screwing up the process, not fix the process, hire an employee, and they're in the same boat. Same problem occurs because they didn't take the effort to fix the process in the first place.
So sometimes it's not the person, it's the process.
Right. Well, 7 of 8 times is not the person, it's the process.
Gotcha. No, that's crazy.
I think that is one of the biggest keys that we help businesses with. But I also think it's making sure everybody knows the direction we're going.
Yeah.
Sometimes, visionaries love to, maybe they don't even have a clue as to what and where and why they're going, where they're going. And, setting that goal out there really helps everyone on board, row in the same direction. Gary's got a great story about that. But, and it helps that visionary to hold something accountable. It's like, hey, this is what I want. This is where we're going. Let's get there. And then kind of check marking the box off along. Yeah, we've made it this far and we're going to keep going. It just gives us something to reach for.
Wayne asked me one time, Brett, he said, Gary, if you weren't a business coach, right? If you weren't a business strategist and you were a business assassinator, what tool would you use? What 7 tools would you use to destroy business? And I thought about it and I said, what a demented question, first of all. Second of all, my answer was I only need 1 tool.
Yeah.
If I could kill the lines of communication in a business, I could shut any business down in under 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. My dad was in the military for 21 years. And he said, Gary, our number 1 objective every time we went into battle, because he was in a couple of wars, he says, was to take out the lines of communication. If you control the lines of communication, you control the supply lines and you remove all hope from people.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what's really important. And the Bible is filled with stories. Tower of Babel. Right. They had the wrong purpose. God confounded the language. They stopped any progress. But it was also used in Pentecost Sunday, where they wanted to do something great and they couldn't because nobody understood each other and they could all understand each other and during that time. And so communication, and God has shown us over and over again, communication is a key. One of the things I thought was really interesting, goes back to you, is I was at CG about a year ago or 6 months ago, somewhere in that time frame, and Mark Del Torre was talking about his integrator and how well they got along, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at his profile. I'm like, not really the ideal profile for integrator. Like, why does it work? And then I looked at Brian. I'm like, wow, why does it work with Brian? Brian's not the ideal profile either. So how does it work? And what I found was the common theme and the common thread to all these different people that do well with their visionary integrator relationship and now owner of a visionary relationship is that you guys have the same communication style. In PI, I looked at your and Brian's communication style. It's the exact same. Mm-hmm. You guys communicate the same way. And because of that, you trust quicker, right? Yeah. And so communication is one of the biggest things. We walk in, there's no communication.
Yeah.
And so because of that, there's no accountability, right? And so we talk about process and accountability, but it's also a better way to communicate. It gives tools of communication. But communication is probably the biggest one. The other thing I'll tell you that I find in businesses a lot when we go in is I read a book a year ago now. It was called Broken Windows, Broken Business. And it talks about the importance of those small things, the little things. And when we go into businesses, they just don't do the little things right. Yeah. They're great at making money. They can buy and sell a house and and literally change the world with things, but they don't do the little things right. Like a P&L and like processes. And and honestly, people are like, what do you do? What do you make? How do you make a difference? We make you do the little things. Mm-hmm. Just get good at the little things. And one of the little things is, Brett, so broken windows, right? Broken windows in a business. I've looked now almost 20 years at looking at different businesses and go, what's that first broken window that causes it to fall apart? You know what it is? The very first broken window is not communication. It's not complacency. The first broken window is gratitude.
Wow.
The number one thing we see is when people stop being grateful in their business. They stop being grateful for their people. They stop being grateful for their success. They stop being grateful for their spouse. They stop being grateful for the God and the life that he's given them. They stop it. And you know what happens when we stop being grateful? We start becoming entitled.
And that's where
Our world is filled with people that are entitled right now. Because we stop being grateful. Brett, you know this. And people think this is the stupidest thing ever. I've heard like 20 people tell me, I can't believe you make us do this every time. But every meeting we start, Brett, we start it with what? Do you remember? We started with good news.
Good news.
Why? Because we're trying to protect the broken window of gratitude.
Yeah.
We want to force you to be grateful so that you don't become entitled. Because here's what happens. Gratitude gives way to ingratitude. Ingratitude gives way to entitlement. Entitlement gives way to bitterness. Bitterness creates silos. Silos breaks down communication. Communication creates complacency. And you know the compound effect after that. It's a cancer. Everything's cancer after that.
Amen.
But it all goes back to being grateful. What did God do to the Israelites in the wilderness when they stopped being grateful? He said, this isn't something I want to be part of. You're not going into the promised land because you've stopped being grateful. Mm-hmm. Right? And I wonder how often we rob ourselves of success daily, weekly, and in our lifetime because we just start feeling entitled.
No, I think it's an easy thing to do, especially, and I see it happen all the time. And you know, as the business owner, we see it too, right? The guy comes in, they're so thankful. They have this job, and they hated their last job. And they come in, and now they start making a little bit more money. And then a couple years later, they're making a lot of money. Yeah. And then it's still not good enough. And we think, but you just came in. You hated your job, and you're making 3 times now. And but as an owner too, we get into that mode too. So I think it's great just to start off each day with that, with gratitude, good news. I definitely love that for sure. And again, if you guys are listening to this, check out Sharper Business Solutions and Gary and Susan, their team. You guys have a lot of family working for your team, just an amazing team to work with. And it's just awesome. So I want to talk about a couple other things before we run out of time here. But you guys also, number one, you're a powerhouse business couple, but I see just an amazing marriage too. And you guys also do the couples retreat each year. So number one, you know, you're doing all this business stuff, these events, you got the leadership circle, mastermind stuff, and then you're doing some personal couples things too. So why did you guys start doing the couples retreat? Why is that important to you guys? Susan, you can answer that.
Well, can I say something real quick?
Sure.
So I was always taught that if you have a weakness, that you either start a podcast or an event and bring the experts in to help you. And so identifying that I'm like the weak link in this relationship, I thought, well, maybe I should start a couples retreat so we can bring some experts in. No, I'm just kidding. But 23 years of being married and ups and downs, as we've talked about today, and unwavering love from Susan to me and back and forth. And Susan, you came to me one time and said, are we really truly helping people, right? If we aren't helping their lives. And what do you want to say anything about that?
I was being an entrepreneur is hard. And being married is hard. Yeah, when we add 2 hards to it, it's like
really hard.
It's really hard.
I need to find really hard.
Yeah.
Get an entrepreneur and
No, but you know what? We have grown up, and as I feel like we grew up together because we got married so young. I was 19 when we got married, and we took every year we took a couple of days to really strictly focus on our marriage. And it's an opportunity our church provided for us. And it's like, and realizing out in the world that that's not the case for everyone. And honestly, when we first got married, we weren't entrepreneurs, but it was still something important that we needed. But honestly, we were working with a team who had a bunch of husbands and wives that we went out to for dinner. And what we do is really help you understand yourself in business, but it relates to relationships as well. So if you can better understand your partner as to why sometimes they do what they do, it helps give you a different perspective of the way and the reason behind what they do. And it just became this absolute passion of wanting to help in that arena and in that area, because I know if you're happy at home, work is so much easier. Yeah. It does, honestly, if you're it's the home life, I think, that if you're struggling the most in, that's when work becomes the most difficult. So it's because you can't separate what's going on from home. You bring it with you to work. So
yeah, we have a book that we released this year in January called Is Your Business Sick?
Yeah.
And it's on Amazon. And in that book, we talk about different, so I related back to my story of having Lyme's disease and how Lyme is a parasite that kills the body. And I talk about identifying the parasites in your business, in your life. And so I saw a lot of correlation between this parasite and how it affected me, destroying my body. And then when I looked at business, and I thought, there's a lot of parasites in our businesses, right? That literally ultimately kill it. And one of the parasites in our business is our home life. Yeah. Right? If you think about it, I know a lot of people don't think about it that way, but if you have a crappy home life, whether you're an employee or you're the owner, it's coming to work with you. Right? It may not be on the front of your face every day, but it's going to be on your mind. It's going to affect productivity. It's going to affect your mindset. It's going to affect your well-being, your happiness. It honestly could affect your health, right? And then ultimately cause you not to go to work or be sick or stressed out or what are all those things that come in, right? Like we're at this mastermind this week in Phoenix, Arizona, and the common theme right now is everybody's walking around talking about their home life and how this past year has either been great for them or not great for them, right? And how it's affected their business. And so Susan and I had a resolve to the fact that are we truly going to help people's businesses if we can't figure out a way to help them at home? And so it first seemed like a little bit of a conflict. Are you trying to be everything to everybody? And the answer is no, we're not. We're trying to help you be better at relationships, right? And those start at home. And honestly, it starts not with just a spouse, but with your kids. And we're not the experts on it, right? Like we're 23 years, we have our ups and downs. We fight just like any other couple would fight. There's transparency there. The good thing with us, and I think the difference with us is that we take time to work through those, right? Every year as a business owner, you sit down with Brian and you create a plan. You create a vision of where we're going, how much money we're going to make. You make the decision, Brian, are you my visionary for next year? Right? I mean, that's the owner's job. The board of directors' job is to determine who the visionary is. And they honestly can fire the visionary. And so you sit down, what's your vision? Do I like it? Are we going somewhere together? And then you get on the same page with that person. You get on the same page with Brian. And here's the thing. We find it important enough to take time to do that annually with our business. Why don't we do that in our marriage?
I don't know.
And so this annual couples retreat is a business plan. It's a personal plan for how you're going to function together for the next 12 months.
Honestly, it was a book that I had read that I think the statement in it goes something like this. If I ran my business like I run my home, my business would fall apart. And it's like, okay. And it really is the understanding of we put so much priority on the revenue we're going to bring in and, the KPIs that go along with our business. And then why don't we translate some of that to our family life?
We were at a mastermind. Susan was sitting next to a guy. I won't tell you his name, but she's sitting next to him. And Susan never talks. She's very quiet, especially in masterminds around people. And this guy's talking to somebody else. And he's like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done. Yeah. 10 years, man. I'm done with her. She's just done. I'm not going to pursue her. She doesn't want to pursue me. I'm not pursuing her. It's over. She doesn't deserve me. She doesn't deserve me. I work. I do all these things. She doesn't want me. She doesn't want to fight for me. And I'm not going to fight for her. And he's like having this rant, and Susan just looks over and goes, like about a minute later, and she just, hey, can I ask you a question? He goes, yeah. She's when a seller calls you about buying their house, he's yeah.
And they tell you no.
And they tell you no to your offer. What do you do? He said, well, I call them back.
Yeah, I keep going.
He's like,
how long? Call them.
How many times you do that? Hey, I'm relentless. I ain't never giving up. I'm coming after that. I'm getting that house.
Susan, you cornered him.
She did. Yeah. If you look at it, oh, you're willing to do that for money, but not your wife.
Wow.
And he stopped talking at that moment.
Yeah. It shut he down. Like he didn't say another word. And then he came up to her about a week later. Like he called her on the phone. He called her, and he called both of us. And he's like,
"You're right.
You're right."
Yeah. Like we'll fight for what we want in business, but why don't we fight for what we want in our relationships or in our marriage?
Yeah.
So.
Our song is I'll Fight for You.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal one.
Yeah, and we'll fight for each other. And we'll have our bad days, but we don't stop fighting.
I love that. I was at a mastermind one time, and this quote really resonated with me because this guy, very successful entrepreneur, had just gotten divorced and went through this very difficult time in his life. And he said, "There's no public success that will ever replace your private failure."
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, I mean, if we can just run our families like we do our business, and when I say that, some people's like, I don't want my family to be like a business, right? Well, it's an organization, and I think the biggest thing is just planning. Like, it's like, hey, focus. You just focus on it, plan your vision, plan what you want to do, plan what you want your family to do this year, or what your family values are, right? And just getting on the same page with that. And I think you guys are just an example of that. And I know my wife and I started doing that and just really changing the dynamic of our marriage and our relationship. Before we go into the last part of the show, guys, one last question just to ask you guys. So what advice would you give just the entrepreneur out there right now that's right? We've all been there. We're working 70 hours, 80 hours a week, grinding it through. Maybe they have a small team, maybe 2 or 3 people. What advice would you give them right now when they're stressed out, working all the time, can't think about anything else? What would you guys say?
Honestly, it sounds a little self-serving, but get a coach. We need accountability to our actions. Every one of us do. And Michael Jordan had a coach. Even the best of the best have a coaches. They have life coach. There's life coaches. There's business coaches. There's people in our lives that are there and meant to be there to help us and help us get to that next level. And I wish I could tell you that if you implement this process or do this is going to change it all. But the fact of the matter is, even if I gave you all that without accountability, without vision, without somebody else seeing it from a different perspective and helping you get to that, you're never going to get exactly where you want to be. Brett, you said a year ago in a meeting, we sat there and you said, I just didn't even know. I didn't even know that was an option. Right. And so that's what a coach does. It gives you perspective. It gives you the ability to see things that maybe you couldn't see before. Yeah. And honestly, it's not like we're wise sages going through life and God's given us this oracle ability to look at your life and say, here's where you're going to be and that's what you got to do. It's just sometimes when we're in it, we don't see it clear. Mm-hmm. And it just allows somebody else to see it a little differently. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that everything we say, somebody's got to take and run and do, and it's going to change the life. But here's what it does. It does challenge the mind. It challenges the thinking, and it creates accountability, right? And I think that's what it is. Ultimately, it goes back to the word you said earlier, focus. It creates focus. We found, Brett, last year that the first time ever, or in a long time for me, that short-term vision trumped the long-term vision, right? And people had a lot of success in 2020. If you look at it, I talk to entrepreneurs all the time that say it was a better year in 2020 than 2019. And it rattled me a little bit because the Bible says the vision, where there's no vision, the people perish, right? And so we need vision. And I thought, I've been teaching vision planning for 20 years, right? Like why does it not matter, right? Nobody could see the end of 2020 in March of last year. No. We all got hyper-focused on short term. And it became really real to me that short-term vision is just as important as long-term vision, right? Mm-hmm. And so that focus that the coach does, visionaries, one of the problems is they either are thinking so far down the road that they don't live in the moment, so the moment keeps them pulling back in every day, or they live so much in the moment that they're not looking at the future. So it's either one or the other. You can't have just short-term vision or just long-term vision. Here's the thing. Long-term vision gives us hope. Right? It doesn't give us results. Mm-mm. Bible says that faith is the evidence of things hoped for. Right? The evidence of things not seen. I mean, that's what vision is. It's hoping, but not seeing it yet. Right? That's what inspires us. I always say visionaries get inspired by long-term vision. Mm-hmm. Employees get inspired by results, short-term vision. Right? And we have to have a combination of both. Long-term vision gives us hope. Short-term vision gives us results. And a coach, the right coach, will be able to help you with both.
Love it. That's awesome. Yeah. No, that's great advice. And I am right on there with you. I always hire a coach. I've hired business coaches. We just hired, my son has ADHD. We just hired an ADHD coach, life coaches, fitness coaches. I'm trying to help teach my children, and I've thought about hiring a teacher to help me teach, right? Maybe Susan, I'll hire you, but that's great. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the Breast Snodgrass podcast today and everything, your wisdom. Guys, make sure you go check out Sharper Business Solutions, check out their companies. That's amazing. Gary and Susan, I want to end today's show with a section called Power Questions for the Power Couple. So this needs to be a short section, so I'm going to give you 1 minute each answer. I'm going to ask each of you just different questions here. So 1 minute to answer these questions. Power questions for the power couple. Gary, number 1, who wears the pants in the Harper house?
In the house, Susan.
Would you say that, Susan?
Yeah, honestly, planning what the house looks like, planning dinner, planning things like that. He doesn't care. He's like, it needs to get done, so let's take care of it. But it's all yours. It's all you, babe.
I decided that when we got married 23 years ago that I would make all the big decisions and she would make all the small decisions.
There you go. It's about the small decisions. It's not about the big things, Gary. It's about the little things.
Yeah, well, in 23 years, there's never been a big decision.
That's cool. Awesome. All right, here, number 2. So this is for Susan. Susan, do you have kind of do you have a process for your personal life, for a family life? Like, what's something that you have a process for when it comes to your family?
So everyone, I think I've showed only a few people because I am a little obsessed with the project management software called Asana. Mm-hmm. So in Asana, I have my entire family calendar set up where it automatically reminds me of birthdays and anniversaries, and kind of it's linked to, I even remember what I purchased them last year, so I can just send it through Amazon to make sure, gifts is one of my love languages. So I know I want to love on others by giving them gifts. So family calendar set up. House cleaning is set up that way. I have my housekeeper who has a really long list of everything that needs done every 2 weeks, and some that are set on a monthly cycle. And so that's in Asana. I have cooking or the cooking and the grocery shopping all in Asana. I plan every vacation in Asana. Asana runs my life, and it's kind of like I use it in business, but I have a whole project private for me, all in personal. So
we even have a romantic schedule in Asana.
It's not romantic. It's a hobby schedule. It's date idea.
I thought about you guys the other day because my wife and my son are in Grand Rapids throughout the week. He's at a therapy center right now. And then, so I'm taking care of the home here. So I have to do the laundry, the dishes, and everything like that. And my wife, she gets a little obsessed about the laundry because she doesn't think I know how to do it. So I'm like, you need to write me out a process. Like, I'll do it however you want to do it, but I need a process with it. So give me an SOP, baby.
I love it.
All right, next question. So Gary, do you have a morning routine? What is it?
So I'm not a morning person.
Okay. Your morning routine is sleep in.
Yeah. It's my goal every morning is how late can I stay? That's my goal. I really don't have a routine other than I get up, I go straight to a shower. I need a shower to get me going. And honestly, as soon as the shower is over, I come out and I usually jot down all the ideas I had in the shower because I'm a big time visionary in the shower, or I talk to Susan about it. Mm-hmm. But then we get into daily huddles and stuff. I just go straight at it. I don't want to tell you that. I don't want to lie to you and tell you that I've got this unbelievable.
No, that's good.
I don't. I get up, I get going. Nothing crazy. I don't drink coffee. I don't do anything like on a routine. Susan is the schedule person. She gets up early. She reads her Bible. She's up an hour and a half before everybody. She writes in a blog and a journal about how horrible I was the day before. She does all those things. It gets them off on her head, but so that she has coffee. She has her routine every morning. But no, I don't. I don't have a routine.
Do you ever talk to yourself in the shower? Like if you're giving a presentation, you're like practicing? Do you ever catch him, Susan? He's like in his shower and he's like...
No, he constantly talks to me in the shower.
Yeah, I do need people close by so I can have conversations while I'm in the shower.
All right, awesome. All right, Susan, what's one thing that drives you nuts about Gary?
One thing that drives me nuts. That's funny. I think we practiced this question yesterday and I was like a little guilty about even saying it, but he never stops working. Never. It's like we'll be in the middle of a family activity, enjoying family, and he's like, "Hey, how about this?" Like, "Hey, it's not time for work right now."
You're like playing Monopoly or Scrabble. He's like,
No,
oh,
that's very true. Especially any kind of like a strategic game. He's like, "Hey, we can implement this," and it's like, "Wait a minute, come on."
Hey, let's just have some fun.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Gary. What are you obsessed with?
So really funny. So an obsessive habit is I like checking my body or my what's it called?
Your vitals.
My vitals.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's an interesting thing. Like I find it a very blessed thing to know that my heart's still beating, that my temperature. I have a thing that goes on my arm that tells me my body temperature, it tells me my sugar, it tells me all my metrics. Like so, yeah,
that's
people.
Cool.
Yeah, I really want to know all my metrics all the time.
Interesting.
I've lost
because I get a little freaked out when I'm hearing my heartbeat and I'm checking it. I'm like, oh my gosh, my heart beating. Like,
he freaks out.
No, seriously,
it's like an obsessive habit.
Yeah, I love it. I love knowing like how different things make my body react and respond, and I like metrics. Numbers tell us a story. They don't lie to us.
Awesome.
So I like it.
All right, I got a few more. Susan, what book have you read recently?
Multipliers. And if you have not read that book, it is one of the most eye-opening things on the way we lead people every day that should and hopefully change, to become a multiplier versus a diminisher. Yeah. It's a phenomenal book. I literally just finished it.
Brett's a multiplier, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have read that book. It's a really good book. All right, 2 more questions. Gary, what do you love about Susan?
I love Susan's joy. Susan finds joy in everything, and joy in like the worst and the hardest times. She can still have joy. From losing a mom, losing to her brother at 28 years old. Like she finds the right perspective that leads to joy every single time. She's constantly. When I think of Susan, I think of the verse in the Bible. It says, "A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit driveth the bone." And Susan always finds a way to have a merry heart.
That's good. That's a good quality. Have internal joy. That's awesome. All right, last one. Susan, what do you respect about Gary?
It's funny as it is that I would say that's one of the annoying things I hate about him is that he works all the time, but he has this constant need and drive for constantly improving. I don't think he will ever be satisfied with the status quo. When we first got married, we lived in a 2-bedroom house. I was perfectly happy, I didn't have the desire for more, but he always has. It was like, no, we're not going to stay stagnant in this. We're going to improve, do better. And it's caused me to have a true passion for learning as well. But it's just his desire to constantly push to do it better.
That's good. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. All right, bonus. All right, one more. Gary, what was your favorite baseball card?
My favorite baseball card was Oral Hershiser.
Oral.
He was my favorite player, but he would sing to himself hymns in the dugout to keep himself calm in between innings. In 1986 and 1989, it's just Oral Hershiser for the Dodgers was I cherish that card because of who he stood for and what he stood for.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thanks for playing that. Awesome power questions for the power couple. This is with Gary and Susan Harper. Thank you guys so much for being on the Brett Snodgrass podcast. Appreciate you. And God bless you guys so much. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you so much for checking out the Brett Snodgrass channel. If you like this video, please slam on that like button. And if you really like it, then subscribe to our channel here. And remember to leave us a comment below, and I'm going to try my hardest to reply to all the comments. Thank you guys so much. This is why I do what I do. Every single week, I come out with content that focuses on success, freedom, and living out your purpose. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.